Hello everyone, and very recently Creative Assembly have confirmed that they're looking on doing some smaller DLC packs, which is more or less what is in line with the requested character pack idea, where they say, so we are exploring how we might introduce a smaller style of DLC that brings a single legendary lord or hero unit alongside a few favorite additions. Nothing is really set in stone, but it's quite exciting, especially as they did confirm Neferata there, so it does look like there are some plans already in motion. Now, I don't imagine that we're going to see any of these DLCs anytime soon, likely at the beginning or some point mid next year, depending on how things progress. I do have some questions regarding it, as I feel like there are some questions Creative Assembly could answer to see if, well, the fanbase wants it, and just in general some basic market research, which I think is quite important. Communication is key. Creative Assembly don't really communicate much, but it's about time they started talking more and not going dark for a while and then doing a blog going, hey, we're sorry, we're going to communicate again, and then the cycle begins anew. So let's talk about today, because there's a lot to talk about. But before anything, a big thank you to our sponsor, Instant Gaming. Instant Gaming is a platform where you'll be able to buy a bunch of games at discounted rates, even games that haven't released yet. Gaming is getting expensive, especially if you're a Warhammer tabletop person like myself. You're buying into Grand Cafe, it's not a cheap army, but you still want to buy some games. Get yourself some great discounts, get yourself some savings in, and then maybe wait for Tides of Torment to release in 45 years. I'm about to get myself the new Rogue Trader DLC for 37% off, which is pretty damn sweet. We also have a monthly giveaway going on. Win the game of your choice. All you have to do is click on the link in the description below, and yeah, just sign up. You don't even have to make a purchase. Making a purchase using my special link in the description below also supports the channel at no extra cost to you. This is a company I've been working with for over a year now, and honestly, it's a service that I myself use. I've been able to buy some games and save up for the Grand Cafe army, which was a bit more expensive than I expected it to be. And I'm hoping to see my relationship with Instant Gaming expand as time progresses. Once again, a big thank you to them for the sponsor. Now let's return to our regularly scheduled programming. So first things first, there are some questions regarding the DLC format, because it says either a single legendary lord or hero unit. I don't think anyone wants hero units unless it's going to be like a proper character pack. My question is more revolving around, what is this supposed to be? Is this supposed to be a new format, or is it just a singular lord pack? As you are aware, right now, Lord packs are 1v1v1, so is this just going to be treated like that? Like if you had just bought Gorbad Ironclaw by himself, where you're going to get a bunch of units and so on? Or is it just going to be much smaller in scale? Because a singular Lord pack works out quite well. You get a Lord, you get a Hero Lord choice, the generics, if there's any, and then a bunch of units. That's the big questions that I want to know regarding this, because if it's just going to be Neferata and that's it, well, it'd be kind of boring, right? Is there going to be a narrative, an overarching campaign, or is it just going to be that by itself? And not a lot is answered here, and I imagine it's because Creative Assembly are still trying to flesh it out, but I know a lot of people were kind of disappointed with the fact that, yeah, narrative has been leaving quite a lot. The Realm of Chaos stuff was ended just to be better for these DLCs, and then nothing is coming in. Narrative is important with big name characters, especially characters like Neferata, because she is very, very important. Even they say it here. Someone near and dear to your blood. And are there going to be reworks? This is another big question. For example, Neferata, once again, you know, she's a vampire character. The vampire counts have not had a lot of quality of life issues. Is there enough budget for these smaller DLCs to include reworks? It's all well and good to get Neferata, but if they don't actually functionally finish with the fixing of these races, is there a point? I'm going to make it very clear, as much as I do love Neferata as a character, if there's no update coming for the vampire counts alongside that, well, there's going to be no point to actually play her, is there? Because while she might have some unique mechanics, the race as a whole is in dire need of a proper spruce up. You might be thinking it's a bit too early to start asking these questions, but it's actually quite important to start asking it now. So one, we can get some blogs to start clarifying stuff. Intentions are quite useful here. And two, obviously, throwing ideas at Creative Assembly, because yes, they do keep an eye on the Reddit and YouTube videos and whatever else there may be. It's just the fact that a smaller DLC style is great if it's going to, like, bring more content in, but it needs to be done right. Now, questions aside, and depending on the scope of the DLC, where I imagine some packs could be larger while some would be smaller, depending on their price of course, if we look at all the races for Total War Warhammer 3 so far, there's a fair amount of DLC packs that can be done. depending on the format. Once again, it's very, very important to stress that. But there are loads of races right now which might not have a lot of missing units, but do have a decent amount of missing characters. Or completely vice versa. So yeah, this could be a potential way to just kinda elevate the style of DLC coming out and just make it a little bit faster. Let's talk about Beastmen, for example. Not a lot of missing units. The Praeton is one of them, basically, and that's really the last missing unique stuff, but there are characters such as Slugtongue, Moonclaw, Gorfor the Beast Lord, or even one that I very much want, which is Gorus Warhoof. There are so many characters that could be implemented, and the best thing is they don't need a start position, which obviously is even better because they are considered hordes despite having herdstones. So yeah, you've got quite a lot coming in from just potential characters coming in alone. You could do a DLC pack which introduces 1 legendary lord, 2 legendary heroes, and then maybe a generic lord and hero, and done, right? The idea here is smaller, more effective, and just more consistent DLC packs. And another example could just be the Empire, for example, one of the most popular races in the Total War Warhammer series. You know, we do have a lot of missing characters. When it comes to the Empire, we could be here for days, but people want Kurt Helborg, for example, or Ludwig Schwarzhelm as legendary characters, but there's Marius Leitdorf, there is Lufa Huss, there are so many. These could be implemented as character packs, and that's it. Now, I do imagine that there will be another Empire DLC focusing around Midland, but yeah, loads of other elect accounts have still not been implemented, most of them having models. There have been official representations with either models or artwork thanks to Games Workshop over the years, but they don't want to do just characters. You know, there's a bunch of knightly orders still missing. They could bring in those, finally bring in the Grandmaster, and have like some really interesting system of upgrading, maybe in a very similar way to the Warriors of Chaos. It would be nice to see the knightly orders being able to do that. And we're still missing the Wizard Lords, by the way. Yeah, I don't know how. From a smaller perspective, I could see a lot more of these smaller style DLCs than the 1v1 traditional Lord Pack or the 1v1v1, which is common in Warhammer 3. I could see the DLC value of this game being increased a lot more depending on the scope and general scale of this format. This is obviously subject to Creative Assembly and obviously Games Workshop, but yeah, this could be a lot more. This could be a DLC haven for them whilst they're still waiting for the eventual release of the next titles, and could, in theory, allow for Warhammer 3 to continue for a decent amount of time. Now, before we continue, I want to double back to Neferata for a moment, because a lot of people were wanting, myself included, a Champions of Chaos style DLC for Neferata, which would introduce a bunch of different characters. The idea here was Neferata, Zacharias, Wersarin, and, well, a lot of people wanted a different one for the Strigoi. I would want Yushoran, but a bunch of people I did see posting about Vorag, which is a nice choice too, in all honesty. Now, it's in fact very possible that all these characters listed can be seen throughout possible future smaller DLC packs, but it does lead me to question why they did the Champions of Chaos format once. I'm calling them culture packs for just ease of usage on a video, and then never again. It's a bit disappointing considering that the culture pack format was in fact received very, very well. As far as I've seen, I didn't see a lot of people complaining about it, just the usual, reskin units and so on, but the fact of the matter, it's mostly focused around the characters than it was anything else, and yeah, nothing there. I do have a question regarding timing, because they do say here right now, like, they're focusing on Tides of Torment, but at some point next year there's going to be a DLC pack, which is the largest they've ever created. This is the hypothetical and rumored End Times DLC, very much likely. But are they going to do one of these smaller packs before they jump into the End Times DLC? A big question that I do have there is, again, if they can't cope with what's going on right now with the Tides of Torment DLC, I'm not trying to cull them out here, but it's like, yeah, if that has required a lot of work, and we've seen that it's taken 10 months to get this done, and obviously then with Thrones of Chaos and Omens of Destruction there were delays, how are they going to do something even larger? That's something that is a bit of an issue timing-wise. Is there going to be smaller DLC packs prior to that to just basically buy them some time? And that means that this big DLC, this End Times DLC, is going to be at the end of the year. I do question where DLCs like this could fit, mostly because, 12 months a year, we do have these longer DLCs, larger DLCs, which are taking around 8 to 10 months on average so far, with Tides of Torment being the largest break between DLCs, which is kind of scary, because it does look like it's going to be October. If it doesn't get pushed back a little bit further, we're going to have to wait and see. Maybe it's about time that they start looking towards making these DLCs during the interim, right? There's a lot of patches being done right now, 6.1, 6.2, and now 6.3, and it does feel like we're just going to be seeing a lot of 6 points and 7 points and 8 points in the future. It does lead me to question if that's just taking away from development of that, or if it's a separate team. We don't know right now. Communication hasn't been great with this regard, and we do know that they say all teams are basically working on Tides of Torment. But realistically, if we could somehow see one big DLC, the End Times DLC, and then maybe 2 smaller DLCs next year, that could really help. I don't imagine that we're going to get one this year, mostly because after Tides of Torment, they're going to be doing the announcement of the next title, which may or may not be Total War 40k. And I don't think they want to take too much attention away from that. Let's wait until that gets delayed too. One thing that would need to be stressed out to Creative Assembly is the need for a map expansion. If this is going to become a DLC format moving forward, and we're going to get a Legendary Lord every now and then alongside this other formats, this End Times one that might be very, very large. There have been rumors, I guess, of like 4 or 5 Legendary Lords in there. The map is already full enough as it is. We're waiting for 4 more Lords to come in this year, thanks to that of Tides of Torment. But if more DLCs start becoming more consistent, it's about time that we start seeing the map getting a little bit larger. It's desperately needed. Opening up in Koresh, not even at the idea of a race pack, but more so real estate to be able to play. The same thing can be said about the Northern Chaos Wastes, and if everything goes well, going down south and opening up the Southern Chaos Wastes, because we do know that the map can be expanded southwards now. The technology is there. It's not a major thing, and I wouldn't talk about this here because the more characters that come in, the more congested it feels. And since Creative Assembly are throwing characters all over the place, it's getting to the point that we're getting the Lustria Ball, the Southlands Ball, the Empire Ball. We need a little bit of breathing room. It's desperately needed. More minor factions would obviously help too, especially since they've made the minor factions a little bit stronger. But with more DLC comes more bloat. Now, to end this video off, I do have some questions regarding the potential future. If this is something new going forward, does that mean no more race packs? We've technically had 2 races for the launch of Warhammer 3. We've had the Ogre Kingdoms, and then we had the Chaos Dwarf shortly after. Well, it wasn't really that shortly after, but you know what I mean. I'm wondering if that basically means no more race packs. We haven't really had a lot of whispers going around. There hasn't been anything in the grapevine, for example, and it's a bit of a shame. Not so much because the Ind and Koresh thing, I know a lot of people do want that, but I imagine that, as we know now, it does take a lot of time to create the races because Games Workshop are very heavily involved. But stuff like the Dogs of War, what is happening with them? There is no word regarding them, even though there's been multiple leaks. Some people would have liked something there. Some people would want some minor faction, sub-races, the perfect time to get in a Hobgoblin Carnet, especially now, since these minor DLCs are coming in. I'm just hoping, and this might just be me, but I know CA's trends pretty well, I might say, that this doesn't mean that we're going to see the end of other DLC formats after the End Times DLC next year, which is basically already confirmed. Well, larger DLC. I want them to continue experimenting, finding different options to introduce stuff, because at the end of the day, that means more consistent content and different alternatives. It's always good to have an alternative pop up every now and then. But let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Let's start a bit of a discussion. There's a lot to talk about given the recent news, and I do imagine that we'll have a pretty large End Time style video at some point. There's a few things I want to talk about during this weekend anyway. So yeah, have a great day guys, and I'll see you all again very, very soon.